Saludos amigos y amigas que nos escuchan, bienvenidos a este episodio de su podcast La Guarida del Nerdorriqueño. Yo soy el Nerdorriqueño. En el episodio de hoy hablaremos de uno de mis escritores favoritos de la década de los 2000. Me refiero a David Arroyo. Bienvenido, David.
Gracias.
La trayectoria de David Arroyo escribiendo cómics fue una breve pero significativa en términos de que sus historias eran cómicas, mordaces y conmovedoras. David, ¿cuándo fue que descubriste los cómics?
Bueno, desde chiquito, honestamente, tenía como 10 años y yo tuve un amigo, se llama Benjamin, que actualmente lo puse en el cómic, Benny, y él tenía cómic de su hermano mayor y básicamente él venía a mi casa y we would trade comic books, básicamente Spider-Man, o sea, unas cuantas cosas de Marvel, honestamente. En junior high, o sea, en high school, es cuando me metí en DC, porque tengo muchos amigos que ellos vienen de Nueva York y tenían los cómics de ellos. Y cuando gradué de high school, básicamente eso es cuando empecé a encontrar cómics, independent comics, básicamente. So, empecé a leer cosas como Spawn y Strangers in Paradise y Colin Doran fue una que me gustó también. So I started going down the rabbit hole y hubo una tienda en Puerto Rico que se llama Visual Arts y ahí es cuando yo me metí y empecé a encontrar cómics locales, o sea, y también empecé a leer cómics independiente, o sea, de small publishers como Scott y toda esa cosa. Y eso es cuando empecé a, o sea, meterme más intrínseco a la industria de cómics, básicamente.
¿Cuándo fue que decidiste que querías escribir cómics?
I always wanted to work in comic books at a high school. Y como empecé, I started kind of getting involved toward college, and I would do role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, but Vampire the Masquerade was my big game. I started thinking about doing a comic book about my games, pero no sé, como que I started kind of like learning the actual form of how to write a comic book because I tried to draw a comic book, but I realized very quickly I could not draw comic books. It was just not my thing. Y es cuando I met Juan Lapé, que he's the one that taught me cómo escribir un cómic, cómo hacer esa cosa. Y también conocí a Carlos Mangual, Charlie, como yo lo llamo. Y él me empezó a introducir a Stranger in Paradise. Y ahí cuando empecé a como que pensar en la historia que yo quería hacer, que Reality in the Rocks fue la primera historia que yo quería hacer, que era un autobiográfico de mi vida, exagerada, con amigos míos exagerados. Y eso fue como empezó las cosas con hacer los cómics.
Y ese cómic autobiográfico, eso de casualidad estaríamos hablando del cómic Reality on the Rocks.
Ya. Ese fue mi primer cómic, Reality on the Rocks. Ahí está. Eso lo dibujó Juan y yo lo escribí.
Sí. Tengo adicional aquí, déjame ver si me aparece. Porque la que aparece aquí es la segunda edición.
Sí.
Ajá. Y aquí, esta es la que...
Sí,
esta es la primera edición, bajo Guerrilla Warfare Presents.
Ajá, exacto.
Me gusta más esta porque el anuncio del disco CD no tapa el arte de la portada.
Sí, eso fue algo que Juan quería hacer. Juan was really ahead of his time porque él vio el poder de cómics electrónico, ¿verdad? Antes que nadie, nobody else had thought about comic books, electronic comic books, y él fue el primero que él decidió, mira, yo quiero hacer cómic, o sea, en un CD, porque back then no había tantas cosas como el internet que se podía hacer un download de un cómic, porque él solo empezó a hacerlo en disco, ¿verdad? Eso fue como bien cool que empezó a hacer las cosas así. Y nada, el disco fue algo que fue una idea de él. But I was always really old school when it came to my comic books. So, and I also kind of prefer, I didn't really want one of the characters to be blonde, but that was Juan's choice because, Juan would throw in the little things there.
¿Para qué año alrededor de en cuál año y bajo qué circunstancias conociste a Juan Lapeix?
Eso fue in the early 2000, maybe like 99, I think, or maybe probably 2000. I was working in San Patricio en una librería que se llama Castle Books, que ya no existe. Y conocí a una muchacha ahí que turns out que Juan was dating, and we hit it off. We like comic books. Como que ahí siguió la amistad. And it turns out that he was like, oh, I draw comic books. I want to draw comic books. And I was like, oh, I want to write comic books. And because I can draw. And so we decided to work together. And that's when the collaboration happened. So, yeah.
Aquí estoy compartiendo de los interiores de Reality on the Rocks. Una de mis piezas favoritas, que es un double page spread de la universidad. O la universidad a la que fueron, que entiendo que es una versión idealizada del campus de Río Piedras de la Universidad de Puerto Rico.
Una mezcla, era una mezcla de UPR y la Inter, básicamente. Eso fue una mezcla.
Ah, ya veo, entiendo. Entonces, si mal no recuerdo para esos tiempos, llegaste a hacer un libreto para el ejemplar número 2, pero nunca se materializó publicar el número 2. Pero entiendo que lo publicaste en un foro para que las personas interesadas lo pudiesen leer.
Yeah, exacto. Unfortunately, don't have that copy anymore. So, but yeah, I did put it on the forum because by that point, it was just not feasible to make a comic book because Juan became involved with his own comic books and he became passionate about doing, things like Fairy. We did write together Dead Gods, which is a comic book that he did that we tried to sell to a publisher. Pero Juan como que empezó a hacer su propia cosa y de verdad no tenía el tiempo para hacer el cómic mío y honestamente by that point I had became more involved in other things like reading about the history of comic books, and I just trying to get a degree and find myself, and I couldn't find another artist because finding artists to do your comic book is hard. Being a writer in comic books is hard. Being an artist in comic book is hard, but not as hard as being a writer.
Ya veo. Me gustaría hablar de tu envolvimiento con Carlos Mangual en el podcast Comic Makers.
Yeah.
Tengo aquí. Okay. Aquí tenemos un ad de ese podcast. Esto es tomado de la contraportada y portada del cómic Heroes Reborn, que también fuera en el cual Carlos Mangual lo pongo porque Comic Makers para mí fue un podcast bien interesante porque a lo largo de todos esos primeros episodios ustedes hablaban del proceso de producir este cómic. Parte por parte. Y a su vez tú tenías un blog en donde iban poniendo arte y diseños de diferentes personajes y donde tú ponías tus inspiraciones y otros datos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I really wish I should have really continued that podcast because this was back when podcasts were new. Nadie sabía nada de podcast. I found it by chance because I'd bought an iPad for Christmas and I started playing around with it and I found things about podcasts. And back then there weren't a lot of comic book podcasts. It was very small. So Comic Book Geek Speak y Indie Spinner Rack y una muchacha que se llama Lena Taylor que hace uno que se llamaba I Read Comics. That was my favorite. And we actually had a crossover at one point. And so I decided I wanted to do my own podcast because I wanted to try it out. And Carlo y yo, we had decided to do a comic book called Heroes Reborn. And I thought, what would be a good hook, right? What would be a good hook to make a podcast? Because I could make a podcast just like the other podcasts talking about comic books, but it wouldn't be anything different. It wouldn't be anything special. So I decided, well, what if we did a podcast about how to make a comic book? And I decided this would be great just to kind of promote the comic. And it really, honestly, it wasn't even that big of a thought process. It was just like, I want to talk about what it's like to write a comic book and talk about how to make a comic book and the whole process of how to create one and what behind the scenes are like, because I found that interesting. And so we did that up until we published the comic book. We tried to do it after that, but it would wind up being just not really feasible. But yeah, it was a lot of fun doing it. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. Tengo aquí otro. Espérate.
Uh-huh.
Tengo otra cosa que quiero compartir contigo. Ajá, aquí está. Déjame que suba. Uh-huh. Este es otro double page spread del cómic de Carlos Mangual, a self-portrait comic de Convention Special. Que aquí otra vez se repite lo que hablaba de la versión combinada de múltiples convenciones locales en una sola.
Yeah.
Y aquí tenemos a Tom Bellan, a Juan Lapeix, probablemente la muchacha que se inspiró en la que él se inspiró para hacer Fairy. Y acá está Ángel Fuentes y Carlos Mangual por acá atrás.
Exactly, yeah.
Ok. Y veo aquí que tuviste tú una colaboración como Special Guest Writer. Sí.
Yeah, I threw some jokes in there. I threw some jokes in there. It's basically I just threw some jokes in there and we talked about it. It was really brief. This is actually my favorite of Charlie's comic books. Carlo, but I call him Charlie. Comic books, because there's a lot of great jokes in here. There's a great joke about Danny, creator of Nightblaze, who based on a real story where he ripped up Charlie's comic book because he made fun. Charlie made fun of him. Carlo made fun of him.
Yes, me acuerdo de eso.
Sí. There's a line at the end of the comic book that I still quote to this day. Nobody gets it, but I still quote to this day. That is, they make money off the convention. Miraculously, they make money at the convention, and the joke is that Charlie Angel goes like, "Oh, what we're gonna do with the money?" And they're like, "Oh, well, we can invest in our comic books and make new comic books and invest in our company and yada yada, or we could just waste it on booze and whores." And he goes, "Well, booze and whores it is, my friend. Booze and whores it is." And I still quote that joke because I just thought it was so funny. I still quote it to this day. It's a chiste.
Bueno, aquí tengo mi copia que todavía la conservo cuando salió pues el first printing que era que lo tiraron a color. Entiendo que lo reimprimió subsecuentemente, pero solamente en blanco y negro.
Yeah, it's more cheaper that way.
Sí. Y aquí y no sé si se ve bien aquí la famosa página del individuo que le rompió el cómic.
Yeah.
Después de haber pagado por él,
Mm-hmm.
lo cual encontré que es la parte más graciosa. O sea, pagó por él y votó los chavos por eso. Pero pues, eso es discrecional de él.
Yeah, I mean, the joke was that he was making fun of Danny, and we do it by love. It's not like we're being mean, but it was because Night Blaze had horrible grammar, and so he wrote that Danny talked like Bizarro, which was the funniest. I thought that was hysterical, and the fact that it actually did happen, that Danny did actually buy the comic book and tore it up in such a passionate way. But he still paid for it. You're right. He just still paid for it, the comic book.
Me gustaría hablar de cuando Tom Bellan y tú se conocieron, y Tom Bellan hizo un cómic, uno de sus cómics de True Story Swear to God, en donde él cuenta cómo se conocieron. Te pregunto, ¿tú tuviste algún envolvimiento en cuanto a esa historia? O sea, ¿la coescribiste? ¿Le diste notas o algo? ¿O esto fue algo?
No, that was all Tom. A lot of it was true. Some of it was condensed. Some of it was condensed stories into one story. But that was all Tom. Tom was the one who did that. I was very flattered by it, by what he did. Yeah, I was very flattered. I mean, there's definitely some things that to this day that I still have problems with when it comes to Tom. I think he's a great guy. But there's been like a lot of things since then as I've grown as an adult that I look back and I go, I don't really know how I feel about that anymore.
Sí, entiendo. Según pasan los años, tuve varias cosas del pasado diferentes. Todos pasamos por eso.
Yeah, exactly. I think it just goes into a deeper thing of how, and this is a thing that I have, and I'm not trying to knock Tom or anything like that, right? But because to me, I still consider him a friend. I will always consider him a friend. But it bothers me sometimes, and it bothered me back then. I think this is the reason why I did Heroes Report to a certain extent, was that I felt that it felt like almost like sometimes cultural appropriation, where the tales of Puerto Rico became almost like a fairy tale, and it didn't really reflect reality. And it became, now that and I've struggled with this over the years, where I just go, what I don't want to say right, but what kind of authority you have to tell a story about another culture. And it really kind of bugs me for a couple of years, actually, whenever people would say the Puerto Rican comic book creator, Tom Bellan, well, he's not Puerto Rican. He's white. He's he's a white, let's be honest, he's not Puerto Rican. But when you see people say he's a Puerto Rican artist, it's like, well, he's not, he's not a Puerto Rican artist. He's a great artist. Don't get me wrong. He's a great artist, and he has great stories, and he did some great Marvel stuff as well. But when it comes to the point where it's like you're doing comic books about Puerto Rico and you're acting like you're the authority in Puerto Rico, it's really kind of problematic to me, because we as a Puerto Rican, we have an identity crisis, right? So like, I know for sure right now there's gonna be people in the comments saying, no es puertorriqueño porque está hablando en inglés. No es puertorriqueño porque he lives in New York now. He's not Puerto Rican. But like, what makes a Puerto Rican, right? And that's something that I've struggled with for a lot of years, and actually did a comedy stand-up about it, where there are times where I felt like an undercover Puerto Rican because I didn't fit the mold of a Puerto Rican. But yet they would immediately go, Tom's a Puerto Rican artist. And I go, well, no, he's not. He's an artist and he lives in Puerto Rico, but he's not a Puerto Rican artist. So when somebody approached me to put my comic book in a Puerto Rican online museum to a certain extent, and I see that there's Tom there, and I go, hey, so I have no problem putting my comic, but I think you should really kind of double think that, because, you know, it's not, he's not a Puerto Rican artist. I mean, his comics are based in Puerto Rico. If you're going to say it's based in Puerto Rico, then fine, that's totally fine, but he's not a Puerto Rican artist. And, you know, it becomes a thing where, you know, when you're promoting books about someone else's culture, that's when you start falling into a danger zone, you know, because then it becomes like, well, your completely different view of Puerto Rico is completely skewed. So, por ejemplo, o sea, yo viví en Cerro Bayamón. That's where I grew up, Bayamón, Cerro Bayamón, right? I'm not going to do a comic book about somebody who lives in, you know, Calle, right? And say, it's mi cómic de Calle, and blah, blah, and this is how people live in Calle. I'm not going to do that because I never lived in Calle, right? I could do one about Bayamón. I could do one about San Juan. I could do one about a lot of different things, right, in Puerto Rico. But I'm not going to say I'm the authority on this culture when I didn't have the experience of somebody who lived there, right? But I can definitely do a comic book about the culture of Puerto Rico and my experiences in Puerto Rico, right? My problem becomes where it becomes a thing of like, oh, I'm doing a comic book about Puerto Rico, and this is about Puerto Rico, and this is what Puerto Rico is, and I've only lived here for 5 years. That's when I have a problem there, right? And I felt that Tom sometimes has been falling into that, especially with Chupacabra, where it becomes a thing of like, you know, I'm promoting Puerto Rico, I'm promoting this, and it's like, well, you're not promoting that. You're promoting a story about an idealized story, but it becomes problematic when that idealized story is acting like the authority on my culture, and my culture is not a fairy tale. My culture has a lot of different moving parts, and you lived on one part. You lived in Old San Juan in a very privileged area with very privileged people, right? I didn't do that. You know, I'm sure you, Emilio, didn't do that, right? We all live different lives, but I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, if I do a story about Puerto Rico, that's going to represent all of Puerto Rico, right? And that's a problem that I feel that we have, not just about Tom's comics or anything like that, but it's just the culture itself that I feel is the problem that we have, where, and I've said this very, very often to my stand-up and stuff, where I said that Puerto Rico, you know, we were conquered by Spain. We lived under the tyranny of Spain for hundreds of years. We finally get our independence, and the United States comes and takes us over. And then it becomes a thing of them forcing because it's true historically, they're forcing their culture on us, right? So now we've created this identity crisis, right? Where one person says, tú no eres puertorriqueño porque tú no hablas español. Or tú no eres puertorriqueño porque, you know, you're not white enough. Oh, tú no eres puertorriqueño because you're not black enough. Oh, you're not puertorriqueño porque tú viviste en Nueva York y viviste aquí para 20 años. Ah, no, tú no eres puertorriqueño porque tú te fuiste de Puerto Rico y ahora vives en Nueva York. ¿Sabes? What is a puertorriqueño? ¿Sabes? And that's a question that we're still struggling to this day. And I feel that there's a bit of a hypocrisy when someone can't answer that question for themselves, but yet they choose someone and just label them puertorriqueño. You know, and that was the problem that I had with now that I look back on the comic books that I've made with that Tom did, because that's not really representative of who I was at the time, right? It was always a joke that I was, you know, and I'm fine with it. I was always a joke that I was Tom's fanboy, right? And I love, yeah. Mm-hmm.
O sea, esos cómics de True Story Sword to God,
Mm-hmm.
para mí nunca fueron una representación fiel de Puerto Rico, algo
Mm-hmm.
profundo. Para
Mm-hmm.
mí ese cómic era, primero que nada, una historia de amor contada
Mm-hmm.
desde su punto de vista.
Mm-hmm. And that was great. But eventually it became a point where people started labeling that. And that's...
Lo que yo,
Mm-hmm.
al punto que yo quiero llegar es que me toma por sorpresa cómo subsecuentes generaciones, por decirlo así, leen ese trabajo y lo ponen en un pedestal que entiendo que no le corresponde. O sea, si estamos hablando de una historia de amor y Puerto Rico desde su punto de vista, sus experiencias en Puerto Rico y cómo la visualiza, yo entiendo que eso es exacto, yo entiendo que eso es accurate, pero ponerlo como, digamos, la gran saga puertorriqueña, el perfecto retrato de Puerto Rico, no.
Exacto.
Sorry, pero es como tú acabas de mencionar, hay mucha más profundidad, hay mucha más complejidad en lo que es Puerto Rico y en lo que implica ser puertorriqueño.
Exacto.
O sea, una persona que haya nacido, vivido, sufrido y gozado aquí en Puerto Rico. No es lo mismo que una persona que lo disfruta, como quien dice, a distancia. O sea, la experiencia. Yo entiendo pues, tus años, corrígame si estoy mal, pero tus años formativos fueron aquí en Puerto Rico. O sea, tú viviste, te educaste aquí en Puerto Rico y experimentaste en primera persona lo que es el puertorriqueño. ¿Correcto?
Exacto, sí.
Y después de ahí, te mudaste y experimentaste lo que es ser un puertorriqueño viviendo en Nueva York y absorbiendo y acostumbrándose a una cultura diferente, que es la cultura de Nueva York. ¿Correcto?
Sí. And I experienced the same thing that I experienced in Puerto Rico. Que muchas veces en Puerto Rico yo tuve experiencia que personas me decían, tú no eres puertorriqueño because you speak English too much, ¿verdad? And that hurt a lot, and it was really tough on me. So I thought when I moved to New York that things would be different, right? That I would come here and I would find myself accepted by the Puerto Rican culture up here. And the ironic thing is that I come up here and they tell me, you're not Puerto Rican enough. You're too Americanized. This is my vision of Puerto Rico. You don't fit that vision of Puerto Rico. ¿Verdad? So, and I think that's definitely something that people should explore in comic books and in music and in movies. I think that's definitely something that we should all explore. And I encourage anyone to do that because that's something that's not talked about. And we like to think that things are very simple, but they're not. And when it came to Tom comic book, at first it was great. I loved his comic books about a man who moved thousands of miles to be with the woman he loves in a culture completely different than his own, right? But when it got to the point where the comic book started gaining popularity and people started putting that thing of this is what a Puerto Rican artist is, this is what the Puerto Rican life is like, this is what representing things. And then when he left Puerto Rico, due to reasons, and then now he's doing a comic book about Puerto Rico, and people now are saying online, oh, he's the Puerto Rican artist, he's talking about Puerto Rico. And Tom is, like I said, I have no ill will to Tom. I still consider him a friend, but Tom does buy into that sometimes, where he does talk about Puerto Rico like he's an authority on Puerto Rico. And I don't think it's his fault. I think there's a lot of people that have conditioned him to do that, and a lot of people have put that perception on the comic book, which I feel is completely wrong. But yeah, the comic book, I think, it was always great. The True Story Sort of Guy was always great. My issue, I thought was good at the time. I loved it. Now I look back, I go, I don't really agree with a lot of stuff in there. I felt I was kind of made to be a joke in the comic book to a certain extent, and some comic book strips, which is fine. I don't have any ill will, but I don't really see that issue with a lot of love. I see it with a mixed bag of emotions. on the one hand is like, oh wow, it's great, I'm in a comic book, that's awesome. On the other hand is when I hear Tom say, oh, somebody told me that they have a David in their store. It's like, I don't like that at all.
Perdón,
You know?
somebody told me?
Yeah, he was telling me one time, he told me that he was talking to a comic book owner, and the comic book owner said, oh, I read your comic book, man, I have so many Davids in my store. Like I am representative of fanboys.
Kind of like he
The
made,
loser, yeah.
te convirtió, como quien dice, te caricaturizó, te convirtió en una especie de estereotipo.
Exacto. You know, to a certain extent, and it wasn't like intentional or anything like that, but like I felt like that was a bit of a downfall, a bit of a fallout there, where it's like I hear stories of people saying he tells me a story of like I talked to a comic book owner and he said that he has like 100 Davids coming to the store, and it's like, you know, that's not cool. That's not something I want to be. I don't want to be a stereotype. I don't want to be fanboy David and suddenly have a nickname of people being called fanboy David and it being traced back to me, you know. So that was definitely something that I had to deal with. That was really kind of hard at certain certain terms.
Sí, entiendo.
Mm-hmm.
Bueno, pues David, una última pregunta. Después de Heroes Reborn, ¿qué otro proyecto de cómics has hecho?
I haven't written any comic books. Charlie has my second script for Heroes Reborn, and he keeps saying he's going to do the second issue for me. Last I heard, that's what he was going to be doing. Other than just playing around with AI and doing like, you know, which I don't agree with AI to make your own comic books, but like just as a hobby, what it would be like to actually have a real life version of it that's on my Facebook. But as for comic books, I've kind of gotten more into the history comic books and the drama comic books. So now I have a YouTube show called Comic Book Tea, also known as Spilling the Comic Book Tea, where I go over the history of the behind the scenes, you know, drama and controversies and funny things that happened in the comic book industry. So we talked about Bob Kane, was a great episode. I love that episode. We talked about John Byrne and Chris Claremont's fight. We talked about, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Y ese episodio me encantó, muy bueno. Aprendí muchas cosas, aprendí muchos behind the scenes que no sabía. Igualmente el episodio que hicieron recientemente de Supergirl, también otro montón de cosas que no sabía.
And the Lobo one was the most recent one that came out, so that was pretty funny.
Okay. Pues David, te quiero dar las gracias por compartir todas estas vivencias, por darnos de tu tiempo y te deseo lo mejor en todos tus futuros proyectos.
Great. Thanks a bunch, man. Stay one day on the moon.
Igualmente. Y con eso terminamos este episodio. Hasta la próxima. Si este episodio ha sido de su agrado, por favor denle like, share y subscribe. Este podcast tiene su propia página en Facebook, así que los invito a que le den follow. Los episodios de La Guarida del Nerdorriqueño están disponibles en formato de video en YouTube y en formato de sonido en sus plataformas de podcast favoritas como Spotify, ahora también en video, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Goodpods y Castbox. También los invito a que me sigan en mis cuentas en las redes sociales. Búsquenme como Emilio Torres PR en las plataformas X, Instagram, Threads, TikTok y Blue Sky.